So I'm so proud to be the moderator this evening. And I welcome all the teachers, educators, school owners who are attending today's session. I'm sure you will have a lot of takeaways because the combination of panelists is so brilliant today. We have a designer who develops the program, which means gamification. We have somebody who's involved in business, but is also involved in developing. And then we have a school principal who is using this program in her school. And keeping in mind our government's new education policy and their focus on foundational numeracy and literacy. You must have all read the Nipun document of the Government of India, which focuses so much on foundational numeracy. It is very important that we have a good math numeracy program in our schools because usually we have children who may be good in numeracy and math, but we end up making them hate that subject. I was one such student. Maybe I had a bad math teacher and I ended up hating algebra and geometry. And today I'm writing a book on numeracy because I have found my lost passion after meeting people like Matific and a lot of other educators who make you understand how math and numeracy is all about logic, fun, and understanding. And that's exactly what today's session is going to be about because the topic is Education 5.0. We've all been through a pandemic, which kind of made us realize that it's time to stop cribbing about technology because it was the only thing that saved us during the pandemic. It's time to embrace a balanced approach for technology. And that's what the Matific program stands for. It involves gamification for children while learning math. And I think that is something brilliant. That is what today's child needs because we have to move away from this chalk talk and the teacher talking all the time and bookish knowledge because that's not going to help our children, especially the generation who has learned how to switch off their sound and video on Zoom. They are not going to be concentrating in a classroom where you're only going to use a blackboard whose color you keep on changing to white and green and whatnot. But what today's child requires is what Matific is offering. So I'm very proud, I'm very honored to be the moderator. And I'm going to be asking questions to all three panelists. I have shared with them the questions, but there is going to be a surprise question also for each of the panelists. So good. I hope you are nervous because that's what schools do to children. They give them a surprise test. So I just wanted the panelists also to experience the same. But I'm sure you all are all experts and we're going to have fun in this session because learning is all about fun and that's what Matific stands for. So my first question is going to be for Pooja. Pooja, you call yourself an early childhood educator, and Ahlcon International School, I know, has always implemented the latest and the best when it comes to curriculum or any support that children require. So my first question to you is that do you think that games produce more engagement among students? Can you share some examples to support that thought?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Swati. And I would like to just say a namaskar once again and good evening, everyone. I would like to thank the Matific team and feel honored to be with the esteemed speakers and with Dr. Swati on board. So as Dr. Swati have already asked, do games produce engagement among the students? I would like to answer by saying yes. Education apps and online resources, I feel, are one of the interactive tools which engages and motivates a child for self-learning. And as you have said, during the pandemic, we have witnessed how teachers have crossed barriers in empowering the students with knowledge and wisdom through technology. And we all agree over here that this time the technology was like a blessing to the entire world. The teacher apprised themselves with gamification to make the learning platform more fruitful. My team of teachers, if I talk about, included latest technologies in their pedagogies, such as taking children on virtual trips to Red Fort, museums, church, used augmented reality in their teaching concepts. As foundational literacy and numeracy is fundamental in early childhood development, my team of teachers made interesting and engaging games and stories on quizzes, Kahoot, Plotagon, Word Wall, Book Creator, and whatnots that promoted logical reasoning, critical thinking, and also the language development in students. The feedback that we received from the parents and students was so overwhelming, and it helped us in delivering the curricula in a fun way, like we are all talking about. I would like to share here that Ahlcon International is enriched with the game developed by students of BITS Goa in the form of an alien called as Kaju. Now, this is a very interesting character, and we all know that young kids, they have a very different learning style. Some of them learn by looking, some of them learn by listening, and many others by moving. So this character Kaju that we have through a motion sensor below the screen imitates all the actions done by the child in front, like jumping, sitting, writing, running, and all these actions that he does is through these games. So we in all have around 30 games that comprises of short stories and concepts, and these are taught in the form of real experience. Our aim is here is to improve the learning outcomes and to promote the teamwork and intrinsic motivation among the students. I personally feel that group games should be incorporated in such a way that when students work together, they bring in the value of collaboration. And this will make the learning process more interactive, fun, and impactful without stressing the children with homework or forcing them into rote learning. I'm sure all of you here will agree with me that after all, it's a happier child, which is a smarter child.
You're on mute, Dr. Swati.
So sorry about that. Uh, thank you, Andrew. So Pooja, that is something where I agree with you. Kaju is something that we use in our schools also, and I think that is the best combination of movement and technology, because that's where one of the most important criticism of technology comes, that children start leading sedentary lifestyles when they are using technology. They're not able to exercise. And this program, which is developed by the BITS Pilani ex-students,
Yes.
has movement and makes the children move, run, jump, hop, all the while learning essential skills, literacy skills, numeracy skills, etc. I fully agree with you on that. And it's so nice to know the wonderful initiatives your school keeps on taking. Really, keep on doing that wonderful job. My next question is actually going to be to Andrew, because he is the product and innovation head. And Andrew, I heard that you are a great proponent of geometry, and I have recently become a fan. I've become a fan of the father of geometry, Euclid, and
Yes.
so interesting to read his work. And I wish these stories were told to us in the math classroom. So my
Absolutely.
question is, how will you differentiate? Because people are always confused between digitization and gamification. So how would you differentiate between digitization and gamification, especially in mathematics education?
Right. Thank you for the question and the opportunity to speak to you all. I'd say that the first thing to think about with both digitization and gamification is that neither of them are as new as you think they are. The first attempts at digitizing education, I would say, are if anyone's old enough, marking multiple choice exams using a Scantron. I'm certainly showing my age here, where students fill in the bubbles and then you sort of pass it through. So that is an example of digitizing an aspect of teaching, just marking. So digitization can occur whenever we are trying to use computers to make something easier. And in general, the leading edge of digitization has always been teacher focused. How can we save time for teachers in marking? How can we save time for teachers to put together tests? Digitization has been mostly a teacher-focused initiative, but at its heart, we understand that how powerful digital technology is, and when we use that in one way or another, we are doing something digitized. But it's not clear that digitization in and of itself has had any great effect on educational outcomes. It may save the teacher some time from marking, which might lead them to be more well rested the next day and have a better class, but it's not quite what we're talking about here. Gamification is actually much, 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 much older. Even something like, so I learned English, and my son is currently learning the alphabet, and doing so by learning the alphabet song. When he does really good in school and completes all his tasks on time, he gets a gold star. These kinds of motivational tools are something that is familiar to absolutely every teacher that's ever stepped foot into a classroom. So gamification is something that is primarily focused on motivating students. And when it comes together, where we have digital gamification, it's where students are engaged in some game-like experience, and they are doing it using technology in some way. And so when it comes to mathematics education, if a student is doing something mathematical on a screen, it's almost certainly digitized. But if it has some extra motivating factor, that's where the gamification angle comes in. So, and I'd say that this is a theme that I will probably return to a lot during this webinar, but gamification is a really great way of shifting your learning, your teaching style, from being teacher focused, you mentioned chalk and talk, to being student centered. When you are thinking about your students as players in a game that you are running, then all of a sudden you are focusing the experience on the student and thinking about why they care and help them to get involved. And gamification is an important tool that we have to help center our focus on students when they're learning.
I am so happy to hear that, Andrew, because my first brush with accepting or embracing technology in education was with a program with Tata Sky. Tata Sky is is a kind of a cable kind of a program in India, and
Right.
it DTH platform actually.
Right.
And they wanted to start something for the earlier students where it would be games, work with the remote, and children would
Yes.
have select, so that was my first brush with technology because I was the consultant for their program. And when I saw how children were completely immersed in learning through that, and my complete concept of technology being bad for children changed from that day. Because as you said, when schools choose technology for their classrooms, they usually think of the teacher, the teacher's convenience. For example, the whiteboards that we put in classrooms, I mean,
smart boards,
they're not going to, the smart boards as they call them, they're not going to help the students much. It's 70% more for the teacher and just 30% for the children, So that's why when I went through the Matific program, I was elated. I said, this is a program that cares for the students, the learners, and how they are going to learn, because today's generation is a design thinking generation.
Absolutely.
They are not only problem solvers, they are also thinkers where design is concerned. So they don't want to do any task which even is remotely like rote learning. And that's why your program, especially because it's been translated in India in so many languages, I think it's the right fit when we talk about education 5.0. So taking from that, I would like to go to Sahil. Sahil, do you think our Indian education system is ready for education 5.0?
First and foremost, good evening again to everyone, all the academicians. So many of them, I was just going through the list. I have visited schools, and there's a disclaimer before I start. I have been to over 10, 11,000 schools in last 10 years, met principals. So whatever discussions and panels I go in, so I just try to share the feedback which I am getting from principals. and the directors of the schools or the educators. Because why this rider? Before answering the question, I'm a management graduate. I'm a sales guy, business guy. So I'm not an educator, but I've been learning in last 12 years from all the principals, directors, and the teachers. So this, I would say partially yes as an answer. There is a reason to it. In India, we have over 15 lakh schools. 4.5 lakh schools are private schools and remaining are government aided schools. And it is splitted across the cities and the categories. And categories are largely been defined by professionals. If I talk about, there will be A category schools wherein you have good infrastructure available, you have teachers available with the rich experience, and then you go to B category, then it starts deteriorating, then C, then D. So it's very challenging. And I'm not saying, I'm not tagging it this way. You go to a D category school sometimes and you realize you find phenomenal infrastructure there. You have fantabulous teachers available. So it is very situational and circumstantial in a way. So answering yes, not really. I would say partially yes. But we have, as a country, we have that capacity and capability. And with our government working on several aspects, and they want to spend a lot on education for the future of kids, that's important. And the second bit is going to be how we train our teachers. That's very challenging. So nobody is working at grassroots level. There are solutions in industry. There are over 200 ed tech companies today. But when you go and meet a teacher and you throw a solution to a teacher, so what happens in that case? She just feels like she's gonna be like Sahil Kapoor. Oh, what is happening? This is from where this question comes up, and how I'll handle this bit, and how I'll deliver this content to the kids. For that, proper training. It's not only about having a gamified content available or kinesthetic content available. It's about how we train teachers backed up by world-class infrastructure and the reports for teachers, the teaching aids, the reports, so that she has weapons in her armory, which can be thrown here and there, because there are three set of learners in every classroom. There will be sharp learners like Andrew and Pooja, average learners like Zainab, and slow like me. So what happens when she's teaching? Because I think there are different strokes for different folks. So when you're teaching diverse kids and diverse set of people, so you need to be prepared. You need to have that weapons in your armory. So partially, yes, ma'am, but long way to go. We have that capacity and capability. I'm sure we'll be able to achieve it.
Absolutely. But I'm very curious. You didn't put me into any category.
Ma'am, you are a sharp learner, and rather you are a professor of this school. So I can't put you in any category.
Not at all, not at all.
Right.
But I like the way you categorized and you talked about the ability to move towards Education 5.0. And you're absolutely right. We have a mixed bag when it comes to educational quality in our country. But I'm so happy that after the NEP, everybody has started taking education more and more seriously. Before I move to my next question to all the panelists, I have a question now for the viewers, for the people who are attending this webinar, and you will have to type in your answer. The government has released, this is my question now, the government has released two documents after NEP 2020 in relation to NEP 2020. Both of the documents' name starts with N, letter N. So do you know the names of those documents? Please type in your answers. Let's see if we get correct answers from all the educators, because it's very important that just throw some questions sometimes to the people who are attending also, so that they also feel involved. Let's see what are the answers coming in. I can see some of them. Yes, absolutely. They are writing. Oh, yes, I can see everybody. Oh, yes. Some have got one right, and I'm yet to see anybody with both right. Okay, I have one with both right. Wonderful. Wonderful. I can see everybody typing away there. Yes, so many answers coming in. Absolutely. So actually, the first person whom I saw with both of them in the right place and was Archana. And Deepika also has got it right, though the spelling is wrong, but she is also on the right track. And it's very, very important to understand that both the documents are very important if schools want to move towards ensuring education 5.0. The documents are Nipun. Nipun talks about foundational literacy and numeracy and how to take it forward. And then we have the National Curriculum Framework for the foundational years. For the first time, our country is going to have multiple national curriculum frameworks. And the first one, which is on foundational years, was released last month in October. And that should gear up all the schools to understand that the country has become extremely serious about foundational literacy and numeracy. That is very important. That is where we need to put our focus, and that is where Matific can help us do that in our schools. So my question to Pooja, Pooja, Sahil spoke so well about Education 5.0, and Andrew actually led us to understand the need for change in the classrooms. So, how is your school planning to incorporate gamification and prepare for Education 5.0?
So I would say that as an early childhood educator myself, I am dealing with the children who are already a century ahead. And what I mean by saying all this is that these children whom we are dealing with would be witnessing a transformation in terms of technology and artificial intelligence by the time they would be graduating from school. So, with digitization taking an upper hand and technology conquering the world, the students we are preparing for in school education 5.0 would be experiencing education 6.0 by the time they graduate or they're out of the school life. Ahlcon, if I talk of, is already a technology-friendly school. And we are looking for a product that develops foundational literacy and numeracy skills in the students. A platform that has engaging content, that teaches critical thinking, problem solving, and FLN. So the approach towards successful and sustainable implementation of Education 5.0 requires developing the transformative competencies, if we talk of, building a knowledge base for 2030, and also working on the anticipatory mode with timely reflection on feedback. So I would conclude by saying the NEP 2020 has envisaged a futuristic education, and the Ministry of Education has named its tableau on 26th of January as From Vedas to the Metaverse. In that sense, the responsibility of early educators like me and everyone over here are well cut off. Thank you.
So well said, Pooja, from Vedas to the metaverse. I mean, that's what, when we say from roots to wings, from that's so important for today's children to ground them into the culture, but yet not keep them alien to what's happening in innovation,
Exactly.
research.
Yes.
And that is what I think why I love being in India, is that we embrace both so beautifully in our schools. And that's why I'm a huge fan of the work that Ahlcon does, because they are always the pioneer in accepting and integrating the latest trends, but not just for integrating them. They study them, they ensure that they are correct for children, and only then they integrate them. So, Andrew, my next question is for you. Gamification is something that most educators are not very, very receptive to, because they have not experienced it as much, because the minute you say gamification, we think of videos, video games, etc. And the minute you hear the word video games, we think it's harmful for children. So my question to you is that gamifying education, what is known, what is believed, and what remains uncertain?
So thank you. I'd say that to any teacher who is skeptical of gamification, I would say that you almost certainly use gamification in your teaching practices already. It's just potentially digitized gamification that you are skeptical of. And you're not entirely unjustified to be skeptical, and I'll expand on that in a little moment with the rest of my answer. But I'd say one of the things that is known is that framing learning as a game to students has immediate psychological benefits. In particular, for students who suffer from some degree of maths anxiety, such as yourself when you were a child, Dr. Swati. Framing it as a game can immediately change a student's perception of a lesson. So even if you, as an attendee of this webinar, think to yourself, well, my principal's never going to get some digitized game and we'll never be able to do this. I think that, you know, with the advancing march of technology, it won't be long. But even if you're in a position where you don't have any access to a digitized game, a great way for you to, even if you yourself are a little uncertain and not very confident about teaching mathematics, a great way to approach a lesson is to think about how can I make it into a game? And once you make that decision, the resulting lesson is going to be better for students. That much is known. And as I mentioned before, gamification is another way to help focus your teaching to be student-centered, which is also known to be more effective in terms of long-term learning as well as short-term learning for students. Having student-centered rather than teacher-centered learning allows students to build meaning and conceptual understanding of themselves, which leads to lifelong retention of what you're trying to teach them. Now, what is known about, what is believed about, I'll say one more thing about what is known about gamification, is that gamification does serve to motivate students to engage with whatever it is that's in the game. And what is believed in terms of gamification is that this motivation continues on outside the game, that you may introduce something like probability by getting students to play a game with dice or a deck of cards and have them play against each other, have a cooperative game, have a competitive game. And that once that game presents itself, your way to introduce probability, that they will be engaged and motivated in probability as an abstract concept. That is believed, but is yet to be fully demonstrated. So it's a great way to start. Is it a great way to continue? We certainly believe so, but we haven't been able to empirically prove that yet. In terms of what's uncertain, I'd say that in general, we do understand that gamification has been a good trend in educational circles. But what is uncertain is that there are definitely some forms of gamification that tend to motivate students just to play the game. So students will learn how to game the system in order to exploit the rewards, and they may not actually do the learning. So in terms of what is uncertain, it's exactly what separates good gamification from bad gamification. And I think that in general, when teachers are reluctant to engage in gamification, they think that it's just going to be this bad version. So what's uncertain is exact criteria for what's good and what's bad. But one thing I can reassure every listener is that there is lots of really good gamification out there. And rejecting gamification out of hand is like rejecting television because we think it's going to kill off radio. Like, television is here, there's really good television, there's bad television. I can't really tell you in a bullet list what makes the difference. So that's a little uncertain. The other thing that's uncertain is that it certainly appears as though certain learners and certain learning types have better reaction to certain gamification principles. So for example, there are certain learners and certain learning types that very much thrive in a competitive environment. One, they are competing against one another, where there is a leaderboard, where they have a chance to be number one. That can be incredibly motivating for some learners. But for other learners, it doesn't quite hit the same. It doesn't land the same for those students. So in terms of what's uncertain, being able to match different kinds of gamification to different kinds of students is something that is an art more than a science right now. But one thing for certain is that there is definitely a game that can help every kind of learner. Yeah, so I would say that we know that gamification is powerful. That is known. We believe that gamification is good for long-term motivation in the subject matter. And what's uncertain is exactly the best way to implement it, and what sorts good gamification from bad.
Wonderful. Andrew, that was really wonderful, because you started by saying that teachers are already using gamification in their classrooms, because when you use real life games, games in the outdoors, game in the indoors, you are actually using games in learning. And it's
Absolutely.
only now that you're talking about digitizing those games and moving to a technological platform. I think that is going to make educators feel more comfortable, that it's not something that's completely out of the blue. It is something that we are already doing. We are now matching it up to technology, which is where, which is the what interests today's children, you know. And
Absolutely.
when I was doing my research on gamification and game-based learning, I learned that in the 17th century, you know, educators like Vittorino used to use this in the classrooms. So it's not a new practice. It's something that we all need to embrace. And I'm sure if in the 17th century technology was there, they would have embraced that too, because a true educator knows how to keep pace with the latest research and technology. And something else that you said struck a chord, Andrew. You said that all students don't thrive in a competitive based, game based learning, you know. And that's so wonderful, because there are three things that we must always keep in mind. One is safe practice, experiential learning, and interaction. That how much of interaction do the children have with each other and with the teacher in any kind of formula or technique or a new program that we use in the classrooms. So I'm sure the listeners will be happy to know that this particular program absolutely focuses on that. Andrew, my question to you, my surprise question to you is, uh, do you keep in mind teacher training when you are developing the program?
So I'd say that the answer is yes and no. So it's probably a bit of a surprising answer. So I'll start with the part that is no. And that is, when Matific designs its content items, our entire focus is on providing an enormous variety of different games to suit different learning styles. And we hyper-focus on the pedagogy and the interactions that are expected of the student. We want to make sure that when a student is playing an item within Matific, that they can reap the full educational benefits from it, no matter what kind of learner they are. So when we are in that sort of laser focus, we are not necessarily expecting a teacher to be sitting there and helping the student through the experience. We want it to be a self-contained, direct educational experience. That said, everything else about what we do on Matific is about helping teachers and students. We want to tell the teachers exactly how each and every one of their students are going, what kinds of activities and what kinds of concepts are students not demonstrating that they are confident with. Yes. And then helping the teachers take informed action. We think that you should do some instruction with this student on this topic. We think you should assign this activity to this student, because we fully and firmly believe that the person who is going to have far more impact on the educational outcomes of the student is the teacher, a lot more than us. So for us, we fundamentally believe that the teacher is our biggest ally. In fact, we are trying to be the best assistant we can be to the teacher. So I'd say that that's the yes and the no. We want to make sure that students learn and we help them as much as possible, but we also understand the critical role that teachers play and do everything we can to support them.
Wonderful. I'm so happy you said that. You were so honest. That yes and no, because you cannot think only of the teacher when you are planning or designing something, because it's very important that that aspect is taken care of later. You first need to focus on how children
Yes.
will adapt to it, how will they react to it, and is it necessary for them. I'm so glad you said that, because most developers always nod yes and they say yes, 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 we think of the teachers, and that tells you that their focus isn't ultimately the product. It's more about pleasing the adults who are
Exactly. Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
a big round of applause for that.
Oh, thank you.
Very importantly, what you said also, that the teachers need to focus more on understanding the needs of the children. And that's what I love about the program Matific, that it keeps the teacher and parent both updated about what does the child like, where the child is, and how to best support the child, you know.
That's right.
So always feel that a good program, whether it's a curriculum, whether it's a online program, should have a combination of both curriculum and assessment. Because without assessment, we are just hurtling in the dark without knowing where we are headed. And assessment keeps us grounded. And that's so, so, so important. I'm so happy that you were so honest.
Thank you.
For our viewers, if you want to read up more on whether gamification is and can be an effective pedagogy, there is a UNESCO document. All you need to do is Google search why games can be effective pedagogy. And you
Yes.
will be able to get your hands on that document, because it's very, very important for educators, teachers to be well read on any topic before they implement it in their schools. So, Sahil, I'm going to come to you now. um, we heard from Pooja about their plans and how they are gamifying and how they are preparing for Education 5.0. We heard from you about how we are not ready for in you know everywhere in every state, and we heard from Andrew about what actually is gamifying education. So my question to you is, how does the Matific Math League? Because I in Reshma's introduction, she spoke about this competition, this contest that Matific has. It's called the Matific Math League. And I'm so happy, because I'm sick and tired of only spelling competitions. And we go around in the world as if, you know, just reading and writing are important, and math has absolutely nothing to contribute. So, A, congratulations on coming up with the Matific Math League. But how does the Matific Math League fit into this concept?
Ma'am, when we talk about competitions, when we talk about Olympiads and leagues, there are a lot of leagues in the country which are being launched on the daily basis. And when you go and meet school principals and directors, you realize they don't have time. They cannot introduce anything new, because during the year it's a challenge and they get only 180 odd days to teach. Actually, there are 224, but there will be things happening. Something new comes up, sports day, or there's some function in school. So you are left with 180, 190 days. So it's very tough to accommodate the leagues, competitions, or Olympiads. So what we have done, we are not paving away from the content. Our content is 100% mapped to your books. So teacher has a liberty of any time switching back to book and then coming back to a gamified content. So what happens here? Now we are in the month of November, December. So most of the entire year academic planning and coverage is done, 80-90%. And kids have apprehensions on a lot of topics, and a lot of topics they have missed and they want to do revision. So what we have done, we have given them the complete access. So these 15, 16 days, they have a liberty of going on the platform and using our content and understanding, okay, I was not able to solve this. Let's do it gamified way. Then they have a report. Their teacher has a report. Yeah, Sahil is not good at division. And why he's not good at division? And what is the remedy required? So that is there. So it's a 360-degree approach here. And just adding to Andrew, what Andrew said, content is developed, everything is ready with us, but it's not finalized. Before finalizing content, we have child psychologists. They tell us, okay, this is good for age 7 kid. This is not good. So it again comes back to Andrew. So his task many a times he's developing something, and mid of that, it's not approved by developers, and he has to redo it. So it's a tedious job when you are doing it from heart. So we have passion for mathematics. We have passion for gamification. That is why we are able to differentiate. And I personally believe it's about differentiating or dying when it comes to business, when it comes to any solution. So it's out of the box thinking. And it's not only gamification, it is gamification with 360-degree approach. Adaptive learning is there, your comprehensive reports are there, and remedies are there. So everybody will tell you, you have this problem. What is the solution? System is providing you the solution.
Absolutely. Sahil, you have put this into such a beautiful, brilliant perspective of the schools, the problems they face, the lack of time, the amount of portion that they have to complete, and how brilliantly Matific fits into all that. And I loved what you said, that you can go back to your class book and then come back to the program on Matific. I think that fluidity is what is required when we take children into or take technology into the classroom. It's, as I said, balance of technology is something that the pandemic taught us, and we can't now take back children only to the blackboard and books and stuff like that. We have to keep that little bit of technology. And I also feel gamification, the way it's done at Matific, promotes self learning, and that is something so deep rooted in any of the theorists that you learn about, whether it is Montessori, whether it is Froebel or Steiner, or it is Piaget. They all speak about self learning. So it shouldn't always be the teacher teaching. It should be also about some freedom and autonomy given to me that I can learn on my own. I think that improves self esteem like nothing else can. So I think that's very, very important aspect of Matific. And my surprise question to you is, um, in your interactions that you have had with all these schools, which is the most important hesitancy that they have towards any tech based program like yours? What is their main hesitancy towards it?
Ma'am, I'll just make it little humorous. There are two things. One is the commercial part of it. Because schools have budgets and they decide it in JFM, and if you are going mid-year, they are not able to decide it. That's on the humorous thing. Second bit is, again, I said getting everything and then implementing and executing it. We have seen a lot of edtech companies coming, selling solutions, and schools buying it, but execution has not happened. And there's a reason to it. Synchronization with the content has never been there. So you get the content, but that has nothing to do with the book or nothing to do with your topic, then it's of no use. Then
Absolutely.
if you are delivering that content, it's not simplifying your teaching learning process. If you go with a holistic approach and it's developed by academicians and developers and legends like Andrew, and then child psychologists coming in, then you have put in a lot of effort. Then you have put in your years, like it's been more than a decade for us now. And today we proudly say we are ready. We are available in 60 languages. We are delivering the content in 120 countries. There are over 20 ministries promoting this solution, and they don't promote it overnight. They see the depth of solution.
Yes. Absolutely. Sahil, I must say, I've become your fan. You are one of the very few business heads that talk sense. Otherwise, they only talk business. And your depth of knowledge about what schools need, what the program should have, I think I salute you on that. It's amazing, because that's what schools need. We don't need a sales representative. We need somebody who helps us understand the why, the how, and the why not. And that's exactly what you have covered so beautifully. And as to your humorous comment on finances, I would say that schools need to be very wise about what they invest in. Most schools have the budget, but they try to put their finger in many pies, and they end up coming, having five substandard products rather than having one good product. And that is very, very important. Sahil, just off the, away from the conversation, do you all participate in the bet show that happens in UK every year?
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah.
Okay, great. Because I think many schools pick up many of their products from Bet, as much as Jess, which happens in Dubai. But I'm a huge fan of Bet, because anything in technology is something that we've always picked up from there. And I'm very happy today that Matific is there in India, is there in this format in India, which is beneficial for children, and with the support system that you talk about. Really, Sahil, that's brilliant. My surprise question to Pooja is going to be that would you recommend Matific to other schools, and why?
Absolutely, ma'am. In fact, I would vouch what Sahil was just talking about, because our school have registered for this Metific Math League 2022. And I would say that this is actually acting as a base to make children understand what a concept for them might be a very difficult one in maths, and they think, oh my God, how will I solve this out? But I think this Metific Math League will make that concept more easier, more enjoyable, and I think it will be helping them in understanding and making their learning lifelong, as everyone is talking about. So I will surely be talking about it. There is no iota of doubt about it. And with this, I am very convinced that this Metific is going to serve the purpose of making learning more fun and joyful for the children, whereas making maths read from a textbook rather than go into a gamification thing, which is going to help them for the long life.
Perfect. You know what? You all have, all three of you have been such fantastic panelists. I didn't have to interrupt you or tell you stop talking, or you've run out of time. You all are so precise. I think because you all are all experts in your own arena, that you are able to keep your answers crisp and to the point. Because I think what many panelists don't understand is that the more you talk, the more the listeners go to sleep. And I think that is something the three of you have understood so brilliantly. And I'm sure the listeners, the viewers are going to agree with me on that. There's a video I would like Zainab to show before we do closing comments. So Zainab, can we have the video, please? So that was wonderful. Matific Math League. I think that is the need of the hour. And I urge all schools to please participate in that. And we've come to the end of our timing. So my last question to all three panelists, and I'll start with Andrew. Andrew, why Matific?
Matific will help every student discover a love of mathematics and help you along that journey. The reaction that teachers have once all of their students are logged into Matific is incredible to see every time. You are going to be having your students begging to use more Matific, and they will be learning every second they're on the platform.
Wonderful. Sahil, why Matific?
Ma'am, I would just share a saying here. Tell me, I'll forget. Show me, I'll remember. Involve me, I'll understand. We are here to involve teachers, involve kids into activities so that kids understand and teachers enjoy delivering the content to them.
Wonderful. So brilliantly said. Pooja, why Matific?
I want to say, ma'am, that innovation and creativity, when used in such a simpler form and made joyful for the learners, so why not Matific? If we do not take up this Matific now, then we will end up in fighting for today's problem with the yesterday's tools. So it's time to take the change forward.
Wonderfully said, Pooja. And as you said, with yesterday's tools, it's time for us to move towards gamification, especially when it comes to math, because gamification started in 1980 in classrooms around the world. We are now in 2022, and if we are still thinking, should we not, then I think we are already 2 decades late. Let's not wait another decade before we make math interesting for our children. And especially in support of NEP 2020, Nipun, and NCF 2022, we should all ensure that foundational numeracy and its standards increase in our country. So thank you, Pooja. Thank you for being such a brilliant panelist. Sahil, thank you for bringing that dual version of marketing, but yet rooted into practice in schools. And Andrew, it was so nice talking to you because schools never see the innovators that work behind the product. And I'm sure they learned a lot from your idea on what gamification is and the facts that you put forth. So thank you so much for that. Thank you, Zainab, for the back-end help, and thank you, Reshma. Schools who are interested in taking part in the Matific Math League can get in touch with Matific. And Zainab, is there any other way you want them to get in touch with you to take part?
We do have a survey towards the end of the session. They can show their interest. Our team will get back to them.
Perfect. So over to you, Zainab. And thank you all the participants also for being here with us today. Over to you, Zainab.
A very big thank you to the panelists, Swati ma'am, especially to you for hosting a wonderful session. To all the attendees, thank you so much for being the wonderful audience ever. And we look forward to have all the schools, all the teachers, all the classes for Matific Math League. Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.